Well, hello and welcome to my website, Born in Hell. My name is Laurie Smith. I'm a child abuse survivor, and I'm just doing a series of videos. This is just a part 13, years 13 and 14, and looking at the abuse that I suffered, as well as just the dysfunction and destruction of my family. And so, thanks for being here. I really appreciate everybody who's actually watching my videos and interested in child protection, child abuse prevention, and mainly that's what I'm doing this for, public information, and for survivors out here, just to be another voice for those whose voices were silenced. So many people cannot speak out about this stuff, and so many children have lost their lives to abuse, and it's not just abuse; it's to a parent or caregiver or somebody who got a hold of that child and abused that child and killed that child. And so this is why I do what I do. This is exactly why I do what I do. And so, you have to listen at your own discretion to all of my stuff, everything, my audio, my video to do with child abuse, because I'm talking about a very sensitive topic. And, this abuse can bother people. The just, anything to do with violence, child abuse, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, any family violence, any kind of abuse issue. If it makes you uncomfortable, please don't watch and don't listen to my audios, because I do talk a lot about very sensitive material. And I don't sugarcoat it and make it sound better than it is and candy coat it. I just tell it like it is. And so, if it makes you uncomfortable, please don't watch, and that you wouldn't be hurting my feelings at all. And if you're a survivor, make sure you're far along enough in your healing journey to continue on watching my stuff, because I'm talking a lot about things that can trigger people, survivors of abuse. And so you have to be very, very sure where you're at in your healing journey, and know what you're safe to listen to, know where you are in your healing journey, so that you'll know whether or not you should be listening to something or watching something like this, or any of my audio or video work to do with this stuff. My biblical studies are fine, because I'm just doing Bible studies, but anything to do with child abuse, please watch and listen at your own discretion. Minors under the age of 18, please have adult consent. Somebody, even a teacher, somebody you trust, check out the material first to make sure it's age appropriate for you, right? Because I'm all about child protection, child safety, and child abuse prevention. And so, you need to be safe, and you need to make sure that you have consent to, if you're under the age of 18, because I'm talking about a lot of adult issues that people, under the age of 18, depending on age appropriateness, may find confusing, upsetting, and maybe just don't know what to think of it. So make sure that you get consent to listen to my stuff. And for those who are being abused out there, get some help. It's imperative. Get your life saved, get your children's lives saved. If you're in a domestic violence situation, you got to get help, right? And survivors, the same thing. You've got to get help. Reach out and get help. So thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I have a lot of people that listen to my work and support my work, and I'm grateful, because this is hard stuff to listen to, and it's not fun. It's not fun material, and I'm doing it for a purpose and for a reason, and that is to not let child abuse and the issues of child abuse and child maltreatment, child neglect, get shoved under the carpet. I'm just one more voice out here willing to speak out about this stuff and continue making noise about this, so that people will not let this stuff get swept under the carpet, and maybe more parents out there will, be more aware of the situation and protect their children from abuse, and and learn the signs and symptoms, and learn how to properly report child abuse, and then look out for the children around you. Make sure your own children are not being abused, and make sure that the children around you are not being abused. And so thanks everybody. We'll get right into this. This is a very graphic and explicit show. I'm going to be talking about a lot of physical abuse and violence and just horrible things. So if you think it might bother you, you need to turn it off and just don't watch it. Go watch something else, right? It would not be hurting my feelings at all. So we're going to get right into this. I sort of left off at age 12, not doing so well in school, ninth grade, but hanging around with my best friends, Arlene and Desiree, that made me happy. But I was still suffering in this abuse. We had moved. We were back on La Vida, back on the street that I was born and raised on, Levita, and just right next to the house that we used to live in that my parents owned. Right? And so the neighbors knew who we were. They knew that our family was a problem. You know, the neighbors, some of them were really on my mom's side. They really tried to support my mom. Some of them really tried to avoid us at all costs. And because the police were always there, the ambulance was always there, you know, there was always a lot of problems there. You know, they knew that social workers were there 5 years previously when we moved back to the block. So they were well aware of who the Smith family was. And they were well aware of who the Smith family children were. And I was one of them. I was the last born. And so a lot of the neighbors kind of looked down on our family because of these issues. Some of them were not like that. They were very supportive to my mom. My mom loved those people. Some of them were just kind of like, oh boy, the Smiths are back. You know, it's not a good thing. And so I always had this stigma, you know, the Smith family. And so, you know, just life just continued on for me. I'll just kind of continue with a little bit of 12. I'm not going to quite go to 13 yet, but at the age of 12, you know, I'm still suffering under this abuse, you know, and mainly from my mom, some from my dad. But hanging around with my friends. One night, it was St. Patrick's Day, and it was so you know, that's corned beef day, right? This is really rather disgusting, but I just want people to know what sometimes what people will do to their children that is completely horrible, is completely wrong, and it's a form of child cruelty. It's a form of child neglect. It's a form of child maltreatment, you know. And I had eaten dinner at my friend's house, and we had corned beef over at her house. And I was young, you know, not very bright, you know, so I went home and had corned beef at home too, because I really love corned beef and cabbage. Right? And now, after this episode, I never ate it again. But I ended up getting sick. I woke up in the middle of the night. Me and Kathy shared a room. We were still sharing a room because my brother Howard had the other room. We were in a little house. It was still a little house. And me and my sister had one room. Howard had another room. My dad had his room. And I think my mom, she had a tiny little closet room. It was like I think it was supposed to be the dining room, but it was really small, like a little side thing. But at least she wasn't in the living room on the couch. So me and Kathy share a room. So I wake up in the middle of the night coughing and choking and really sick. And obviously I'd eaten too much or something. I mean, probably too much corned beef, right? And so I was really sick. I won't go into too many details about that. But I just thought I was coughing and realized that I had thrown up all over my bed. And I mean, I was sick. Not like a sick, like, oh, you know, I can get to the bathroom sort of thing. I had thrown up all over my bed. And Kathy was freaking out, grossed out, disgusted out, and she went and woke my mom up. And I was so sick, I just wasn't even paying attention because I was kind of like, sort of half out of it. It was middle of the night, and my mom came in and started yelling at me. I thought she was going to beat me. I really did. Because when my mom came in and started yelling at me, I generally got smacked around or got beaten on. So I was like, oh, God, she's going to beat me, and I'm sick, you know. And Kathy's like, well, I'm not sleeping in here with her with throwing up. And my mom's like, well, you're not going anywhere else. You're staying right there. And I'm not changing your sheets. So my mom made me sleep in my throw up. That's how this is how people just don't, they just think that's okay. You know, I was too sick. I couldn't even get up. I couldn't even sit up. So when you think you'd be a little concerned about your daughter, like if they're that sick, you know, that you'd kind of want to make sure they're all right. No, not my mom. You know, not after trying to kill me several times, beating the crap out of me. She didn't care. So that was just more of the way it was for me. And I was able to do things. I was actually allowed to go and do certain things with my friends. Arlene Grego was my friend forever on that street. And I was allowed to spend the night at her house. She wasn't allowed to spend the night at our house because of the craziness at our house. Her mother was very smart and did not allow her daughter to come spend the night. So that was actually really smart. And but I was actually allowed to spend the night at her place. So we had this plan, Desiree and myself, we're all in 9th grade. You know, I'm smoking pot now, we're partying. I want to go out and party with them. And we had this plan. And Arlene said that she was going to, Arlene, we were all going to spend the night at Arlene's house, is what the plan was. And Arlene said she was going to spend the night at Desiree's house. And so we we snuck out and we went to a party. And like I'm 12, like they're just 1 year older than me, and the next year up, you know what I mean? So it was 12, 13, 14. We're young. And out partying with people. I didn't even know who these people were. I had no idea. I was a little buzzed when we got back. So we did. We got back. We came back home about 3 o'clock in the morning, back to Arlene's house. And what she was going to tell, like, we had it all planned out how we were going to do this, right? Because we thought we were smart enough to figure this out. And she says, shh, we snuck back in the window. Desiree went home, and we snuck back in the window. And she tells me, go shut the door, right? Because her door was part, like, just a crack open, right? And I went over there to shut it. And her mom was on the other side and grabbed it and pulled it open. And I'm like, oh, shit, we are busted. So I'm thinking, oh my God, we are so dead. Now, I knew her parents wouldn't kill her. She actually did get the belt, which is sad. I felt really bad about that. I think that, I don't think it was a deterrent, really. The belt really doesn't deter children from anything. It's a great way for parents to blow off steam, but it does a lot of damage to children, and it's not a good discipline tool, because it didn't keep us out of trouble. But she got the belt. But before she got the belt, her mom was like, you two, I'm disappointed in you, and I can't believe that you would do this. And, Arlene, you're grounded, and you can finish sleeping over here tonight, but in the morning you're going home. And this was her mother telling us this, and my face is draining because I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, she's going to tell my mom, and my mom is going to literally kill me, bash my brains in. And because I had never been caught doing anything like that before. I used to get beat for nothing, a look on my face, right? So I'm like, I'm just dead. So my face is draining as she's talking. She's like, you can go home in the morning, and then Arlene's grounded for 2 weeks. You can't see her for 2 weeks. She goes, and I'm not going to tell your mother because I know what she'll do to you. That's what she said. She knew how my mom was. She knew what my mom would do to me. So she didn't tell. And I was really relieved. I was really relieved. And it was a terrible situation. I really felt bad for my friend, though. She did get in trouble. And but this is how that year just kind of rolled along. I was kind of starting to get in a little bit of trouble. Nothing major, but always concerned about my mom, and always concerned about the violence because my mom didn't need a reason or excuse to beat on me, right? So if she had one, it was going to be a real problem. And my brother Howard, he was doing lots of drugs, I'm like 12 and a half, maybe 12 and a half, 13 years old. So he's 7 years older than me. He's like 19, 20, big time drug user. Now this is all going on at the same time that I'm being abused. My dad's still raping my mother and still attempting to rape my mother. If nobody was around to stop him, he would rape my mother, right? And they're still fighting, busting things, throwing things, cursing, screaming, you're a fucking whore, and you're a son of a bitch, and fighting in the kitchen, fighting. Unless we went to somebody's house, and then it was fine. Show up with the potato salad and the cookies and whatever else we were bringing. This was the norm, man. It was just the way it was, We're still going to people's homes for dinner. We're still invited. They're fine at the house, But the minute we get back in the car, it all starts again. This was life. This was my life. And so Howard, he was doing all kinds of drugs. Him and his friend actually had me when I didn't even talk about this before, but they actually had me when I was really little, go through a doggy door of the lady next door when we lived in that one house. There was a lady on the other side that was my mom's neighbor friend, and they had me go through the doggy door to open the door so they could steal her prescription drugs. People would say, did you do it? Well, yeah, I was only probably about 4 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. Not at all. They had me smoking joints, actually. I didn't talk about that either. Smoking pot. and smoking cigars and stuff like that. They would always like whatever they were doing, they'd just give me some, right? So they were just druggies, my brothers, right? So Howard, he would go, like he didn't have any money, he didn't have a job, but he's a drug user. So he had to steal his drugs, or he had to rip some drug dealer off, or rip somebody he knew off, or he had to steal my mom's jewelry if he could get a hold of it, or my sister's stuff. My sister by now, I'm 12 and a half, so she's 5.5 years older than me, so she's now 18 years old. 17 and a half, 18 years old. She was working. She started working young. She would buy herself things, and then she'd have to hide them, because if she didn't hide them, my brothers, well, especially Howard, really, just Howard, really, because he's the only one that was around at that time. Him and his friends would steal her stuff and go hawk it for drugs, or go just trade it for drugs, or get the money for the drugs, right? So I didn't have anything, so they couldn't take it. What are they going to take? My one pair of pants, or I didn't have any clothes because my mom wouldn't buy me anything. She wouldn't even buy me a bra. She wouldn't buy me anything. I had very little clothing. And so, what are they going to do? I didn't have anything until I hit about 13 the next year. So my brother used to go door to door. He's literally up and down the block, and they all knew him. They could see him coming. They'd be like, "Oh God, Howard's coming over here, man. What does he want? It's one of the Smith kids. Bad news, And so he'd knock on their door, and he'd ask for money for them. He'd be like, I don't have any money. My parents don't have any money to give me. And he's old enough to work, right? And they're just looking at him like, you want drug money, Howard, and you're not getting it from us. So they'd be like, move on to somebody else, because we don't feel sorry for you. You're going to just blow it on drugs. You could get a job, right? So, he would just do stuff like this, which, then the parents would be looking at me, the youngest Smith kid, going, what the hell do you want? It's like the Smiths. It's kind of like Scourge on the block, really. And so, he used to bring in big amounts of drugs, whether it was big freezer bags full of pills or big garbage bags full of pot. Now, if I had been smart enough, I would have grabbed one of those bags of pot. But I was actually smoking pot at this time. But I would never let my brother know that I was doing drugs, because he would have probably beat me up, because they wouldn't have wanted me to be doing that, right? My mom would have killed me if she would have known actually at the time that I was actually smoking pot. She didn't know. I'm sure she didn't. So, because we weren't allowed to do what my brothers were doing. We had to finish school. My brothers were allowed to drop out. They were allowed to do drugs around the house. They were allowed to wear their hair however they wanted, because my mom was using them to get it back at my dad. Anything goes with the boys. They can do whatever they want. You stop beating on them. They can drop out if they want. They don't have to get a job. They can just hang around. My mom just, they call that enabling. She was actually the sort of the cause, for a lot of this stuff. And then she was the enabler. Oh, here's my brother, a drug addict. And, nobody's getting him any help. Nobody's saying, you need to go to rehab, Howard, man. You got to get off the drugs. You need to go to therapy. We all need therapy. We all need counseling. We're screwed because of this abuse and this garbage that we've been living with so long. I mean, my brain was trained. 12 years old. I know exactly what I'm living in. And so did he. Right? So it was absolutely horrific. And he had ripped off a drug dealer. 2 big garbage bags full of pot. Brought him in the house, put him in his closet. Well, my mom could smell it, I guess, or she figured it out, because she found it and then beat the shit out of him. My mom was almost 6 feet tall, and my brother, I think he was just a little over 6 feet tall. My mom weighed 280 pounds, and my brother weighed probably 180. So my mom outweighed my brother by 100 pounds. And she kicked his ass. She's like, you get that pot out of here. I don't want those drug dealers coming around here looking for their bags of pot. They'll end up breaking the windows out or killing us or something. You'd get that out of here, right? She was beating him up. And he was just like, he was laughing. He thought it was funny because he's like 20 years old. My mom at this time, I'm 12 and a half, 13. My mom's 38 years older than me. She's 51. So she's 1 year older than I am right now. But she looked like she was about 60 because of just the horror of her life. Right? She had too many kids and she didn't take care of herself. She could have, but she didn't. It's not that she wasn't a pretty woman. She was beautiful. I always thought my mom was beautiful. And it's just that she just never took care of herself. And this abuse, just taking this abuse from my dad all the time, and this horrible. She was bitter and angry, which caused, I think, a lot of her health problems. You know, she just would not relax. She couldn't sleep at night because my dad was always trying to rape her. He would always try to rape her at night, see, when we were sleeping. Somebody had to keep an ear. That's, you're listening because as soon as you hear the fight on, you know that my dad's trying to rape my mom. Then you have to go and try to stop it. I'll go into detail about that. But I'm going to talk about an episode. This is this year. This is the same year. Well, I just turned 13, so this would have been shortly after this summer with my brother running around the neighborhood, trying to get money for drugs, ripping off Kathy. It was just absolutely a nightmare. And my mom, this is a bit of a graphic situation right here. I'm 13 years old, summertime. And so it's the next summer. And I'm still hanging around the house, 13 years old. I mean, I was home sometimes. I was out running around quite a bit too, but I was home sometimes too, right? And my mom calls me for lunch. I wrote about this in detail in A Life of Death Redemption. That's how the book starts out, actually. You can, if you want, listen to my uploads that I put on the underneath Child Abuse Prevention tab for the episode list. I did a reading of my books, if anybody wants to listen to that. Well, she calls me for lunch, which is, she used to make lunch, and if she made lunch and she called me, I better go, because if she has to call me again, then she's going to start getting mad, and I didn't want my mom getting mad. So when my mom barked, I listened. I was like, okay, I'll go sit down at the table. She had lunch at the table. It was just me and her. Howard was in the house. He didn't come for lunch. She didn't call him for lunch. So I think it was a setup, because my mom knew that I didn't like to eat this soup that she would make. And it was like it was like a stewed tomatoes. It wasn't tomato soup. I like tomato soup. It was stewed tomatoes, canned stewed tomatoes with milk. And it curdled. The milk curdled in the stewed tomatoes because of the acid and all that, right? She knew I didn't like to eat that, right? So what does she do? She has me sit down at the table, and there's that bowl of soup, right? Now I'm sitting right next to her. The table's right here. I'm here. She's here right next to me. She has this all set up. That's why I think it was a setup. She wanted to hurt me, right? So I sit down and I'm thinking, oh man, I really want to eat this soup. I really don't, but if I don't eat it, my mom's going to kill me. So, literally, I mean, this is how she was. You had to agree with everything she said. You couldn't like just disagree and be like, Mom, I really don't want that. Can you make me just a peanut butter sandwich? Or I'll make my own peanut butter sandwich or whatever, right? No, that's not the way it worked, That is not the way it worked. So I said something. I don't know what I said. I don't remember, but it was probably something like, I don't want to eat this, or I don't like this soup, or you're going to make me eat this, or something like that. I wouldn't have said anything really bad because I would not have wanted her to beat the shit out of me, right? Because I was used to getting my ass kicked by her, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't like like I was saying, it wasn't like a little slap, you straight up, none of that. I've seen parents do that to their kids. That's not really, a little harmful on the ego, but it's not doing any physical damage, right? Well, my mom would beat the shit out of me, so I was like, I would not have said anything bad. I might have said I want to eat this shit, but my mom was always cussing. I learned how to cuss from her, right? So, but of course, We weren't allowed to do what she did, do as I say, but not as I do, sort of thing. So she got mad, and I mean really mad. And my mom, I'm still not all that big, 13 years old. I don't think I was even, I wasn't as tall as I was gonna get because I did some more growing. I was probably just like a little over 5 feet, maybe. My mom's like 5'11", still way taller than me. You can see pictures of me when I was 13. I was actually still kind of small, not all that big, and it wasn't heavyweight. I wasn't. I didn't have any real extra pounds. Like I wasn't real skinny at this point, but I wasn't overweight. I didn't get overweight till I was older, a few years older. So I was always kind of a little underweight or at weight, right? And my mom just towered over me, especially sitting down at the table. She was a big woman. So she got pissed off because I didn't want to eat this soup. And it's like she set it up. She just wanted to do this, right? And she pounded her fists on the table. And when my mom did that, you just knew immediately that the shit was going to hit the fan. Because that's what she would do with my dad. You son of a bitch. And she'd pound the table and stand up, And I mean, my mom loved to be like the vicious one, And so she pushes her chair back, slams her fists on the table, she's like, stands up over, sort of towering over me, right? And I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. I am going to get beat for sure. Because I know this. I know how she is. I know what to look for. I know the signs. I've been living with this woman's backhand in my face for years, 13 years to be exact. And I know what to look for. So I know this beating's coming, right? So I brace myself. And I'm like, oh, shit, I'm just waiting for it because I know she's going to hit me and it's not going to be pleasant. And so she immediately backhands me. I mean, and hard. She's like standing up over me, and just lets me have it, right? Right across the face. This way, just like this. Well, when she hit me, the chair went back. Now, just to give you an idea, the table was a restaurant-style table. It was really heavy. We got it at a restaurant auction or something because we didn't have any money. And it was the bottom of it was iron. It was really heavy to move. And the table itself was very thick. It was a restaurant table, not a fancy restaurant with wooden oak. We're talking a cheap restaurant table, right? And the chairs were the restaurant chairs. And so the chairs were made out of like really strong metal and like a padded seat, right? The things were heavy. They weren't these lightweight kitchen chairs you see today that you could easily knock over, right? These things were sturdy, man. They weren't going anywhere. Well, that slap, that backhand, knocked the chair back with me on it into the dryer. I detailed this just so specifically in my book. I want people to know that that's not discipline. She could have killed me. My temple, my left temple hit the dryer. So I'm like slapped like that back in as hard as she could. So I'm just immediately like, right into the bloody dryer, right into the corner, the freaking corner of the dryer. So I'm stunned, and the chair comes back, right? And I'm like stunned. And I'm like, oh, she's going to kick my ass. So I freak out. And I actually got up and started to run around the table. And I started booking it out of the house because I'm like, this is going to be bad. I mean, she's going to hurt me for sure. And she did. And so I went around the table to try to get out of the kitchen, to get out away from her, right? And she shoves the table and pins me against the wall. That's how fast she moved, man. My mom was mean. And she grabbed this table and just shoved it right into my ribs, up against the wall. So I'm like, my ribs are like, oh, and I'm like, oh shit. And then she literally wings that thing. This table probably weighs like, I don't know, 200 pounds. It's freaking heavy. And she just wings it to the other side of the kitchen and grabs a rolling pin. Okay, I used to never have one of these after I grew up because of the beating that I got from this. But I want to show you because unless I show people, they don't know what I'm talking about. This is a regular rolling pin. This is something everybody has in their kitchen pretty much. Some people have the really small ones. This is normal average size rolling pin. Even if you beat your kid with this, it's gonna freaking hurt, and it could kill them. You know, especially if you hit them in the head. Well, this rolling pin my mom had was a prized possession of hers because her father, my grandfather, who I never met because he had died before I was even born, made it for her, and it was made out of solid hardwood. It was solid hardwood. It wasn't like this cheapy one here. It was double this size. I mean, I'm talking. It was another. Well, okay, it was another size out. So this is quite a large rolling pin. You could hurt somebody with it. You could kill somebody with this. It's a good weapon. It was at least this long with the handles, right? Much bigger. It also had. It was not this thin. You couldn't get your hand around it. The sucker was like that, like much bigger. So it was much bigger than this. And she grabs it. And I see her grabbing it, and I know I'm in for a beating. And so I just immediately I fall to the ground, first of all. And I just cover my head because I'm like, oh, she's going to just beat me with this thing, right? My mom was always hitting me with heavy objects, table legs, coffee table legs, and, well, the one that we had at that house, right? Because she saved it. So she could use it as a weapon on me, right? And, just anything. Broomsticks. She loved to beat you with a broomstick. And books, whatever she could get in her hand, it was heavy, you know. And so she starts screaming at me like a banshee, man. I mean, my mom when she yelled, I mean, everybody could hear her. I'm sure the whole block could hear her. I wouldn't doubt that for a second. And she starts beating me with this thing, right? And I'm on the ground. And Howard actually, at first, he came to try to see what was going on. And she said, "Stay out," and slammed the door because there was a kitchen door. There was a door on the kitchen, which was weird. And it was an old house, right next to the one we used to own. So, this beating was just vicious, absolutely vicious. And, I detailed it, quote, really heavy duty in my book. And she was just beating my head with it. I had my hands like this to protect my head. And I was on the ground, so she's beating my back, my shoulders, really up here around my neck, in the back, right around my neck, and the back of my head. And she's like, crack, just giving it to me, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm laying there and I'm thinking she's going to kill me, right? And then, she was just screaming at me, like calling me names, I'm going to kill you, you fucking bitch. And kicking me. And she like grabbed my hair and she pounded me again on the head. And I'm trying to protect myself. So this rolling pin hits my hand, hits the bones in my hand right here. And it freaking hurt like hell. So I pulled my hand out and I'm like, oh shit. And then she just cracks me on the head. Right. And she's like, she doesn't care. She doesn't care that she could have killed me, Well, with that crack, that cracked my skull in the back a little bit, and blood was pouring down, and blood was coming down, dripping down my ear onto the floor. And I'm dizzy. I can't see straight, right? Because she's hit me several times in the head. She's beat my back, my ribs. She's kicking me, kicking my legs. She pulled my hair to get me off the ground. She's like screaming at me, "You want some more? You want some more?" And I'm like, no, I don't want any more. I'm like, I really don't. She's like, "I said," she's screaming right in my ear, man, as loud as she could. "Do you want some more?" And I was like, and she just kept beating me with this thing. So, she actually got tired. She got tired. That's why she stopped beating me with that rolling pin. Because she got wore out. So I get I'm getting up off the floor and I'm actually heading to the living room to safety. Just to get away from her, man. I'm like, oh shit. I can't see straight. I can't think. I've got a cracked head. I just took a beating that you wouldn't do that to anybody unless you were trying to kill them. And she spins me around in the living room and she spit in my face. You know, she said some rather choice words. You know, she's still cursing at me. Right? Goes, "You're a fucking slut," and she spit in my face, right in my face. And I'm just like looking at this woman, going, "Are you my fucking enemy? Are you my mother? Or are you like the devil? Or are you like my enemy? Who are you? You can't be my mother. Not the mother I love. Not the mother that I've taken beatings for to protect." You know, she shoved me out the door, slammed the door. And people would say, "Well, why would you stay in that?" I mean, because I could have died. I had a concussion. I could have died. Like, I thought about going to the park and just, you know, there was like a cement tube that the kids used to be able to run through and play, and I thought I should go sit there because that's where I used to go and hang out. And I thought, you know, I could go sit in that tube, in that concrete tube, because I used to go there. And I thought, but if I pass out and I die, there won't, you know, nobody would be able to save me. They wouldn't know I was there. And I started to panic because I'm like, where am I going to go? You know, which one of these neighbors is going to help me? I'm shaking. I'm walking down the street, you know, slowly because I can't even see. Like, my eyes are fried. My eyes are effed. I never did see right after that. And I can't hear, you know, everything is just, you know, screwed up. And so I thought, well, I'll go see Desiree. I'll go see if Desiree's home. So I went to my friend Desiree's house. And I detailed this in the book. There was an intervention done. I asked to not be removed from my home. I asked them to not remove me from my home. And at that point, you know, people would say, that's wrong. That's wrong. But it's not, because it was my decision. And it was a decision that I needed to make for my own reasons. There were several reasons. People would say, why? I've had people say, why would you, you know, you should have run away or something. I thought, well, I knew kids that had run away from home that it didn't work out so well for them. And, you know, I knew they end up in foster care. And then the foster care parents had abused them. So, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out. And I thought, I don't want that. You know, like, I don't want to go to a foster care situation because my behavior, I didn't know how to behave properly. You know, I didn't even know how to talk to anybody properly, really. I was just kind of brought up in this abusive environment. And I thought, you know what, just go to another place and just be abused there. You know, that was my mind, because all adults were abusers to me or had the potential. I didn't trust adults at all, and I didn't trust anybody, really. But what I wanted to, I thought about it later, and I thought, because at the time it was very important that I not be removed from my home, because I loved my mother. And I wanted her to love me. That was the whole thing. That's what that was all about. You know, I wanted her to love me, and I wanted her to take responsibility for me. I wanted her to stop hurting me and to be good to me and just make it right. You know, and I thought, you know, she has to do this for me. Right? And that's why I didn't run away. That's why, see, I wouldn't have had to run away because my parents wouldn't have called it in. I've talked about this a lot on Blog Talk Radio. That's the truth of it too. They wouldn't have called me in as a missing person. They would have just waited till somebody reported me, you know, as a runaway if I got caught somewhere as a minor, you know, or something happened to me, and then you know, the courts would have been like, well, why didn't you report her? And they'd have been like, because we don't care if we lose her, take her, right? We don't want her. So when kids aren't wanted, nobody's going to report them, you know, a missing child. That's why there's just so many of these children just end up in child sex trade rings, you know, prostitution, you name it, man, because nobody's going to report them missing because they don't want them to come home, right? It's a horrific situation. So, you know, the neighbor actually went and talked to my mom and actually told my mom, the husband and wife team. They went down there and they said, if we ever see a scratch on her again, if we ever see a bruise, anything, a welt, whatever, she comes to us to tell us, that you're beating on her and you're mistreating her, we are going to report you and we are going to have her removed. We're going to do it. So my mom said she would. My mom said she didn't care, that she didn't want me around anyway, but that, she just, work it out. So I actually stayed at my friend's house for a week. And, I had never been treated like a human being at my own house, And at other people's homes, just kind of one of these little kids, right? But at these people's house, I was actually treated like a real person. A real person for the first time in my lifetime. And I talk about that in my book. I mean, they were good to their children. They were concerned with their children. They loved their children. And they were good to me. I wasn't even one of their children. And they were good to me. And I could see the difference between how they treated me and how my mom treated me and my dad treated me. And I thought, wow, not every parent is horrible to their children, I mean, wow, this is really different than my home, And I started spending lots of time over there, and they were very gracious to me to allow me to do that. It was Desiree, who was my friend, and because thanks be to her, really, for allowing me to be her friend and for being my friend, because it was a reprieve from what was going on in my house. So we'll finish this up. I'll continue on and we'll move on because I want to. 30 minutes. I think that's long enough. It's definitely a long enough show. So we'll pick up the next time around. And like I say on all my shows, you have to protect your own children. Stop child abuse. Do not let this get shoved under the carpet. This is not discipline. It's abuse. And there's people that would sit there and say, like my sister, she loves that rolling pin. My mom's dead now. My mom passed away when I was 30. And she was 68. And my sister kept that rolling pin. And she loves that rolling pin. And when I used to go to visit my sister, she would bring it out and she'd be like, look, here's Mom's rolling pin. Isn't that great? And I'd be like, Mom beat me with that thing. Mom bashed my head in and cracked my skull. Could have killed me. And you sit here and you honor that thing? It should be burned and stamped on and spit on and burned in a fire pit and sent off to hell. That's how I feel about it. My mom spilled my blood with that, and on several occasions previous, and on further occasions future. But that was probably the last really bad beating that I got from my mother. It was that horrific. And it certainly left its mark on me. And, it's incredibly wrong what people do to their children. And do what you can to make a difference in this world, right? And survivors, walk this walk with me. Do not give up. Not ever. No, we have to win this fight. God bless you all till the next time. Bye-bye.